On the matter of the Chief Inspector of Probation,
Yep.
You corrected it to say that it's an acting
Yep.
Chief Inspector at the moment, which is indeed the case, following this committee's
Yep.
report on the earlier attempt to make the appointment.
Mm-hmm.
I assume that it's still your position that, in the light of the changes to the probation service, you're reviewing what will be required of the Inspectorate,
Yes.
and will proceed to an appointment at some stage in discussion with this committee about the terms of the appointment.
Absolutely. I do think, I want this committee to be involved, and we will move to that as soon as is sensible given the process we're going through.
Seema Mahendra.
Thank you, Sir Alan. Secretary of State, there has been a concern about what the definition of results actually is that's related to the measure. I was wondering if you could clarify what you include in a result that there would be a payment for, and would that exclude out-of-court disposals?
I'm not intending this to include the restorative justice. What we do about cautions is something we have to consider quite carefully, whether we include or don't include a caution. We haven't reached a definitive view on that yet. It's something that I hope will follow through in some of the discussions that's come out of the consultation. Most fundamentally, what my objective is people don't commit further crimes. Now, my view is very clear that I think cautions are used excessively in many parts of our criminal justice system. They are a valuable tool for police in some circumstances. I think police need to have the discretion to apply common sense. I think sometimes in some areas cautions are too readily used. In some cases, people who are getting cautioned I would like to see at least before the magistrates' courts. But in terms of a final decision about do we include cautions in our measurements, I wouldn't give you a definitive answer today.
Could I just follow up that? Would you be able to say when you might be including that? The reason I ask is because cautions have been used increasingly for a range of offences. I think in the year to June 2012, you had 31% of violent offences dealt with by caution, 15% of sexual offences, and it's not just first-time offenders. So actually the number of offenders who have had 7 to 10 previous offences and even over 10 previous offences have been dealt with by caution has been rising. There's obviously, you've mentioned the great disparity across the country. Is this a concern to you? Because if you obviously don't include cautions, then you're actually going to see if in North Yorkshire you've got 19% of offences dealt with by caution, 38% in Warwickshire, with great implications for how you might have a provider doing some investment planning about whether they participate.
Yeah, absolutely. We are looking very hard right now about the issue of cautions. I met senior police officers with the Home Secretary a couple of weeks ago to talk about the issues of cautions. I've said very clearly that I am profoundly uneasy about the use of cautions on the scale that happens at the moment, for example, for carrying a knife. We've got to be quite careful to make sure we don't remove discretion from police officers, but it is the use of cautions is a genuine issue. And I suppose what I'd like to do is to go through that work before reaching a final decision on this. The question: if you have a serial burglar who has stopped burgling but gets into a bit of a brawl in a pub and gets cautioned for it, the question is: do we want to use that? Do we want that to be a tick in the box or a cross in the box or whatever for what we're talking about here? My inclination is I want people to be not committing any offences at all, but I don't want to commit absolutely to saying we would or would not include cautions until I've done a bit more work.
Want to go on to the norms?
Yeah, I just make one last comment on that, and then if I can go on to, which is just clearly there is almost a slight conflict in that you want to have disposals that are effective and cautions may be appropriate, but at the same time you don't want to affect the running of your of the new arrangements. And so I think there's clearly a paradox there in terms of the interests of the providers versus the potential interests of the.
I don't want you to reach the situation at the moment. My natural instinct is that a crime's a crime, whatever the disposal is. All I'm saying is that at this stage, I don't want to give you a definitive final answer. My inclination is if you get a caution, that's an offence. And that's kind of a further offence, which is something that's a cross in the box which I don't like, and therefore I'm not terribly inclined to pay for you having somebody who just goes out and gets a few cautions. I just don't want to give you an absolutely definitive answer at this stage when we've consulted and when we've only just finished the consultation, where we've got a lot of considering still to do about the modelling of this, and where we've got to look at, is there any kind of dividing line that needs to be drawn? So I don't want you to draw a conclusion one way or the other. I'm saying, no, we won't include cautions, or yes, we will include cautions. My natural instinct is a caution is a crime, and therefore it should count as reoffending. But I don't want to give you an absolute certainty that that's exactly where I would draw the line too early in the process when we're genuinely trying to work through issues like this and get it right.
It's very helpful.
Good. If we had a more consistent understanding, what were the appropriate circumstances for a caution?
Mm-hmm. Well, we are looking at the whole question of cautions, because my natural instinct is, certainly with some offences, like carrying a knife, if it merits a criminal justice intervention, then the court should be given the opportunity to review what's happened. If it's a question of using discretion and actually it doesn't merit going to court, well, maybe actually it shouldn't merit a criminal justice intervention at all. But then you have to be quite careful. There are some serious offences where there is actually a non-obvious reason for using a caution, and actually sometimes some of the headlines are deceptive. There was one that said a guy had 133 cautions, and a burglar had 133 cautions, and you would believe he'd burgled 133 houses all in sequence and had a caution each time. Actually, that wasn't the case. He had been done for burglary, he'd gone to prison. While he was in prison, he asked for 133 other offences to be taken into account. The easiest way of dealing with them, because he was already in prison, was to give him a caution for each of them. So it was a kind of one-off intervention. So I think when you get some of the headlines, it's worth just double-checking. We do always double-check, and sometimes think, this is mad, why are we doing it? Sometimes think, okay, that does make sense.
Super.